Hello everyone. As you may or may not be aware, here at Michigan State University, we have a lovely little institution known as the Morning Watch. It's basically a student-run newspaper with the goals of objectivity, not subjectivity, as well as exposing leftist bias. The Morning Watch is primarily run by Sergei, Kelley, a full-time conservative, part-time student at MSU. According to their homepage, Morning Watch stories have been picked up by a variety of news sources, including Ben Shapiro's Daily Wire, Fox News, and Breitbart. Sergei himself is the chairman of the College Republicans of Michigan State and a special advisor to MSU's Turning Point USA chapter and received the Michigan Freedom Fund's Freedom Fighter of the Month award for November 2019. The Morning Watch claims they regularly get thousands of views on their articles, and Sergei has thousands of followers on Twitter. It's so influential that a concerned MSU student has even started their own, better newspaper called The Evening Look. Let me spoil this video for you. The Morning Watch is not an unbiased or objective newspaper. They blatantly lie to promote the idea that Michigan State is infested with leftist bias. Although Sergei would say it's the best publication at Michigan State, I think it's actually the worst publication in the world, and I'd like to prove that to you over the course of this video. So this headline says that ASMSU has passed the bill that allows minors and non-citizens to vote. That's a lie. That didn't happen. For context, ASMSU is MSU's student government. What did happen is that they passed a resolution to advocate that state municipalities be allowed to allow minors and non-citizens to vote. But I guess that isn't quite as punchy of a headline, is it? Basically, the situation here is that MSU put up a sign that's essentially apologizing for being built on land that was originally the Indians'. The land was then transferred to the United States in the Saginaw Treaty of 1819. However, this apology has really offended some people at the Morning Watch. In fact, they call it completely ridiculous, silly, and unnecessary. Here's the reasoning that they present. The indigenous peoples of North America have sovereignty. They always have. We just beat them in war. And in exchange for not slaughtering or enslaving them, as other natives might do, we formed a treaty that allowed them to keep some of their lands in exchange for not attacking our civilians. It is unquestionable that treaties were routinely broken throughout the 1800s, but that fact is unrelated to MSU. So first of all, you might have noticed that saying, in exchange for not slaughtering or enslaving them, is a pretty weird thing to say. I mean, if I offer you a treaty where you give me something in exchange for me not slaughtering and enslaving you, it would be pretty understandable if there was still a little bit of bad blood after that. Plus, it implies that we didn't do those things, but actually the U.S. and the colonies had been slaughtering and enslaving the Indians for a while at that point. But that's kind of tangential to the central claim of the article, which is that the treaty was fair and legitimate. The article says, 114 Native Americans signed the treaty compared to 10 Americans who signed. One could interpret from this fact that Native Americans found the treaty to be at least acceptable. And then later on they write, so I would argue this treaty meant well. It did not intend to take advantage of the Native Americans, and it all around gave us some of the best land in Lower Michigan. No Native Americans were forcibly removed from their homelands with this treaty. They willingly left. This, obviously, is a lie. The Native Americans didn't just happily sign the treaty when it was presented to them. Lewis Cass, the negotiator of the United States side of the deal, intentionally got all of the Indians completely plastered before the signing with 12 barrels of whiskey. And it wasn't just because he wanted to throw a party. Cass wrote, some considerations more obvious in its effects and more congenial to their habits was necessary to ensure a successful termination to their negotiations. So yeah, the U.S. slaughtered and enslaved the Native Americans, then took their land by coercing them to sign a treaty while they were completely wasted. I wonder why some Native Americans might not be so happy about that. In summary, the Morning Watch article lies egregiously about the treaty and the conditions in which it was signed, because they were offended that one MSU hall put up a sign saying sorry. Good job destroying leftist bias. Last one, MSU sex education class falsifies statistics. In this Morning Watch article, written by Sergei himself, he accuses an MSU sex education class instructor of falsifying rape statistics in order to perpetuate the idea of a rape culture. And this article is actually weird in ways besides its unconventional URL. The story is based around a video taken of an MSU student and supposed Morning Watch reporter trying to catch an instructor on citing some incorrect statistics.
Yeah, more of a comment really. So on this study where it found 1 in 5 women would be raped or have been, the study had a lot of errors in it, and the authors actually came out and said that and told people that because it had been used miscommunication really, and the U.S. Justice Bureau has said 1 out of 52.6 women. So I'm just wondering which.
Where you're getting that, we get all of our statistics come from the Centers of Disease Control and Prevention, which isn't necessarily
I'm just saying the study 1 in 5 has been, the authors of that study have come out saying that's wrong. It's just miscommunication.
I appreciate that, though. With that, we're going to move on.
The idea is that MSU instructors are using these statistics to indoctrinate students into believing that rape and sexual assault are actually problems on college campuses. So first of all, there's some confusion here. The claim is typically not that 1 in 5 women will be raped, it's that 1 in 5 women will be sexually assaulted. The Morning Watch reporter says, the U.S. Justice Bureau has said 1 in 52.6 women. Well, there's no such thing as the U.S. Justice Bureau, but what he's referring to is a 2014 study from the Bureau of Justice Statistics called the National Crime Victimization Survey, which I'll call the NCVS. The 1 in 52.6 statistic isn't referencing rape either, it's talking about sexual assault. Also, the class therein is called Sexual Assault and Relationship Misconduct. So the instructor was probably saying 1 in 5 women will be sexually assaulted, not that 1 in 5 will be raped. Second of all, the professor seems to say that sexual assault affects 1 in 5 women, but she does not seem to reference any particular study. But the study that the Morning Watch reporter is probably referring to would be the CSA study. And it's true that the authors of the CSA say the results shouldn't be applied to all universities because they only studied 2. But there's no indication that the MSU instructor specifically referenced the CSA study. If you review the literature, you'll find that the 1 in 5 number is very well supported, so it's insufficient to simply cherry-pick one study with problems to try and discredit this statistic. Other studies that found the same number, or one close to it, include this one, which examined 33 top universities, and this one conducted by MSU specifically on MSU students. The instructors might have been referring to the cost study, which also found that number, and I'll be coming back to the cost study later because it's absent of all of the problems that discredited the CSA study. When the Morning Watch pretends that the CSA study is the only place someone could get the idea that 1 in 5 women are sexually assaulted in college just so they can attack them, they are lying. But that still leaves us with a bit of a puzzle. Why did these surveys come to such a higher number than the NCVS? Well, let's examine that. First of all, if you actually read the NCVS, you would know that it never claims that 1 in 52 women will be sexually assaulted during college. Instead, the 1 in 52.6 woman comes from the American Enterprise Institute's interpretation of a portion of the data, and it's not clear at all that the researchers involved would defend that interpretation. In fact, we even have reasons to think that the interpretation is not a very good one. I mean, first of all, in the AEI's calculation, they use data that the researchers from the NCVS specifically say shouldn't be trusted. But also, the NCVS is presented as a survey about crime. This means that people might not report any behavior that they don't consider to be criminal. And because it's a study on crime, the NCVS's definition is shaped from a criminal justice perspective, so it doesn't emphasize some important categories. It doesn't mention incidents in which the victim was unable to provide consent due to drug or alcohol use. It also doesn't specifically mention unwanted sexual contact like forcible kissing, fondling, or grabbing. But here's the biggest issue. The NCVS uses terms like rape and unwanted sexual activity to identify victims of rape and sexual assault. Now, you might think that that sounds pretty reasonable, but it's actually a very serious mistake, and bear with me as I explain why. The CSA study and the cost study use a different approach, where they instead ask about particular events that might have happened without describing them as rape or unwanted sexual activity specifically. As an example, the NCVS might ask, "Have you ever been raped?" The cost study also asks that, but it's the last question. After they ask, "Have you ever had sexual intercourse with a man when you didn't want to because he used some degree of physical force?" I think most people would agree that it would be fair to call that rape, but only half of the people who answered yes to that question also answered yes to, "Have you ever been raped?" These are called hidden rape victims. Something happened which would qualify as rape as the law defines it, but the victim doesn't conceptualize it that way for whatever reason. If the perpetrator was known to the victim, like a boyfriend, only 1/4 conceptualized it as rape. Once at a party, a girl pinched my butt without my consent. That's sexual assault as the law defines it, but I probably wouldn't say I had been sexually assaulted, especially if I was answering a crime victimization survey. Really, when you think about it, it makes sense. Would you really believe that less than 2% of women at college would ever experience any kind of unwanted sexual contact or be threatened with it in their entire stay there? Also, when you hear someone say something as precise as 1 in 52.6 when talking about things that are very hard to measure like sexual assault, you should probably stop listening to this person because they're just trying to use exact numbers and decimal points to sound smart or intimidate you. So the 1 in 5 statistic has not been debunked, but for some reason, the Morning Watch thinks it has. I think they got this idea from this PragerU video. It does the same little rhetorical trick as the Morning Watch does by pretending that the only source of the 1 in 5 statistic is the CSA survey, and then pointing out that the authors don't defend that interpretation of it. And then it even mentions the NCVS and the AEI's manufactured 1 in 52.6 numbers, without mentioning that the researchers of the NCVS don't defend that interpretation either.
Where then does the 1 in 5 rate that Vice President Biden cites come from? Well, it turns out it comes from a study conducted over the internet at 2 large universities, one in the Midwest and one in the South. Tellingly, the study authors have since explicitly stated that it's inappropriate to use their survey to make that claim. Much more comprehensive data from the U.S. Bureau of Justice Statistics, or BJS, estimates that about 1 in 52.6 college women will be victims of rape or sexual assault over the course of 4 years.
Sergei Kelley writes that the SARV instructors sought to indoctrinate students, and they accuse MSU of falsifying statistics to promote the idea of a rape culture. But they're the ones with completely bogus statistics. There's no validity to the Morning Watchers article or Sergei Kelley's reporting. Does this sound like a news source which follows the values of objectivity, not subjectivity? No. They'll say whatever lies they think they can get away with in order to craft a narrative of leftist bias at MSU. So basically, the Morning Watch is nothing more than a right-wing propaganda outlet run by MSU students, and it's led by Sergei Kelley, who is a hack that cares more about owning the libs than actually telling the truth in the articles he puts on his site. There was a ton of content that I wanted to include in this video, but that got scrapped because I didn't want the video to be an hour long. I'm planning on doing part 2, or maybe talking about other organizations that lie and mislead their audiences. So if you're interested in that, maybe you should subscribe. Also, leave a comment if you have any ideas for who I should try and take down next. Anyway, see you next time.